The Iran war also the major backdrop of the meeting between the U.S. president and the Japanese prime minister in Washington. Donald Trump has been pressing American allies to help in the Middle East.
I expect Japan to step up because, we have that kind of relationship, and we step up for Japan. We have 45,000 soldiers in Japan. We spend a lot of money on Japan, and we've had that kind of a relationship. So I'm not surprised that they would step up.
としまして経済安全保障で安全保障など、幅広い分野におきまして、同盟の質を、さらに高める、多くの具体的な協力を、確認することができました。今後もですね、トランプ大統領とともに日米同盟のさらなる高みを目指してまいります。
The two leaders promising deeper cooperation across energy, security, tech, and defense. They also announced 3 major Japanese investment deals worth $73 billion, a memorandum of cooperation to jointly develop deep-sea critical minerals, and a planned 4-fold increase in Japanese missile production. An awkward moment as well during that summit when asked by a Japanese reporter why the U.S. chose to keep its allies in the dark about the strike on Iran. Donald Trump compared it with one of the most traumatic moments in American history.
Why didn't you tell U.S. allies in Europe and Asia, like Japan, about the war before attacking Iran? So we are very confused about we Japanese citizens.
Well, one thing, you don't want to signal too much. When we go in, we went in very hard, and we didn't tell anybody about it because we wanted surprise. Who knows better about surprise than Japan? Okay? Why didn't you tell me about Pearl Harbor? Okay? Right? He's asking me. No, you believe in surprise, I think, much more so than us. And we had to surprise them, and we did. If I go and tell everybody about it, there's no longer a surprise, right?
Mixed reactions in Japan to those remarks, with some commenting on how the Japanese Prime Minister handled the situation.
総理大臣という立場なんで、すごく難しい反応だったのかなと思ってますけど、個人的には、トランプ大統領の、すごいジョーク、ただのジョークなのかなというふうには受け取っているので、ただ、立場が立場なんで、あんまり、笑っても、そういう批判も来るでしょうし、なかなか反応するのは難しかったのかなと思います。
確かに奇襲っていうかね、突然何の前触れもなく戦争っていうか仕掛けるってことはやっぱりルール違反っていうかね、あれにはなってると思うんで、そこら辺はやっぱりお互いに事前通達ってやるべきだったかもしれないですね。今思うとね、それも歴史的な背景で日本がやったからアメリカドナルドさんがそれを例にとって言ってるので、ちょっとあれですよね、国民としてはっていう感じで。
CNA senior correspondent Michiyo Ishida covering the Trump Takaichi summit from Tokyo, and Toni Waterman keeping track of developments for CNA live from Washington, D.C. Let's start with you, Michiyo. Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi handling an awkward moment. Can she take home a win to Tokyo?
Well, yeah, there were many sensitive topics covered in this meeting, and Japanese government officials accompanying Ms. Takaichi to Washington are reported saying that she scored 95 out of 100. Tokyo was concerned about Mr. Trump's mood and his tendency to change his position on issues. Ms. Takaichi mentioned that before heading to Washington. It turned out she had good control as far as in the eyes of the Japanese public, greeting Mr. Trump with a big, huge hug. And in the Oval Office, she was in control to start the conversation by expressing her concerns on the situation in the Middle East, telling Mr. Trump he's the only person who can bring peace and prosperity to the world. And during the banquet, she celebrated the birthday of Mr. Trump's son, Barron, praising him to have grown into a handsome gentleman, which she noted inherited from his parents. Now, she flattered the U.S. president many times. And back at home, Japanese opposition party, a Democratic Party for the People's leader, Yuichiro Tamaki, gave her a good mark, and that he wants to monitor whether freedom of navigation in the Straits of Hormuz can be achieved. The biggest opposition party, Centrist Reform Alliance's leader, Junya Ogawa, said she went overboard when she called Mr. Trump the person who can bring peace.
All right, Michiyo, a sense of surviving a difficult or a potentially difficult White House meeting. Sanae Takaichi has to go home and continue to act from Tokyo in ways that would continue, presumably, to please Donald Trump in the White House.
Well, from next week, Ms. Takaichi will have to attend Upper House Budget Committee meetings to deliberate the fiscal year 2026 budget, which she wants to legislate by the end of this month. The Diet Committee session will be a time she can be asked any kind of questions. She's likely to face questions and criticisms on her meeting with Mr. Trump. There could be concerns she may have sour ties with Iran by criticizing Iran for attacking its neighbors. It's through the Straits of Hormuz, Japan imports around 90% of its oil. Japan and Iran have had stable ties, and we know that Japanese Foreign Minister Toshimitsu Motegi has been in close communication with his Iranian counterpart, who served as ambassador to Japan. And it's to be seen if Mr. Motegi will be able to communicate well with Iran after he comes home on the Trump and Takaichi meeting.
And Toni Waterman joins us now from Washington, D.C. Toni, presumably leaders meet because they both need to get something out of their relationship. If Ms. Takaichi did manage up to a point to get what she wanted, what did Mr. Trump get?
Well, you know, if this war wasn't happening, if Trump was not asking for help in the Strait of Hormuz, then I would say, yes, that President Trump got what he normally wants. She showed up with tens of billions of dollars in investment commitments on energy projects. There was this action plan for critical minerals and rare earth supply chains. And she offered a lot of praise for President Trump. So these are things that he is usually looking for, but these are very unusual times. And what Trump was really looking for from this meeting was some sort of commitment from Japan to help in the Strait of Hormuz, which, as Michiyo just mentioned there, gets about 95% of its oil supplies from the Middle East. And Trump said at the start of this meeting that he expected Japan to step up. But what the prime minister did instead was not offer the minesweepers that President Trump wants to help remove mines from the strait. And she has previously said that she has no intention of sending them. What she did instead of military personnel and military assistance was that she really focused on diplomatic solutions. She told President Trump that she'd be happy to talk to allies about how everyone can achieve their shared goals in the Middle East. And she also tried to support the U.S. through economic measures. Japan is releasing oils from its strategic reserves. She even mentioned perhaps stockpiling U.S. oil. And this seems to be satiating the president at the moment. We didn't see any angry social media posts after this meeting. And the two of them do seem to, actually like each other and to get along. But how long that holds this relationship without any sort of military help in Iran is something that we're going to be monitoring very closely.
Our pressures will not just on Japan, but American allies, European and Asian, to step up to the plate. Where else do we expect to see pressure from the White House?
Well, the calls for help are likely to only intensify as this war intensifies. As we see oil prices shoot higher, there's been infrastructure damage. A lot of producers are starting to slow or even stop their production because they are starting to run out of storage space. And then, of course, you have no ships going through the strait. So this is all going to push up the price of oil and really test everyone's breaking point. What we might start to see from the Trump administration are some consequences. I mean, President Trump has mentioned multiple times how the U.S. has U.S. military personnel deployed across Asia, across the Middle East, providing this protection to these countries. So perhaps he could play with the idea of withdrawing those troops troops. There could also be implications for NATO. And we had late yesterday, Britain, France, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, and Japan as well, issuing this joint statement expressing their readiness to contribute to appropriate efforts to ensure safe passage through the strait. Appropriate, very subjective term here. And a lot of them saying they're not going to do anything until this conflict is de-escalated. What they are not doing is committing any sort of military assistance. They do not want to get drawn into this war, but they are reframing their messaging to appease President Trump. And they could become even more motivated as we see these energy prices continue to climb.
Oh, thanks for that. Toni Waterman covering the story for CNA from Washington, D.C. and Michiyo Ishida earlier on, CNA senior correspondent, looking at that meeting between Donald Trump and Sanae Takaichi.